Welcome to the Soft Issues podcast. This is a special episode, our first car pod. On the way down to Bath to see Tony, John and Gillian, Matt decided to get some thoughts off his chest about the state of triathlon today. Hopefully this gets your juices flowing, following the inaugural World Championships for the men in Nice and ahead of the Triathlon World Championships in Kona for the women this weekend. Enjoy! Alright, we're on our way.
Now I've got the Proclaimers in my head. Cheers for that.
Earworm of the day.
Oh, grim.
Well, let's. You wanted to talk about something, didn't you, Matt?
Well, for context, where are we going? Why are we in the car?
Why are we in the car?
What are we doing?
Yeah.
Where are we?
Back to mobile bike fit days. Today we're heading down to Bath. Oh, see what I did there? Bath.
Yeah.
Not Bath.
Enjoying your vowels.
Bath.
Bath. Grass.
We're off to Bath to see old Tony Cork, master bike fitter.
Master Yoda himself.
Yeah. And his lovely wife, Gillian. And Bristol's best-loved bike fitter, John Wild.
A.K.A. John the Bike Fitter.
John the Bike Fitter. Well, I think he's changed now. I think he's now called Pedaling Perfection.
Is it?
Yeah.
Rebranded?
Yeah. Going up in the world. Pedaling Perfection.
He'll always be John the Bike Fitter.
Yeah. Not just John the Bike
Not just
Fitter.
John the Bike Fitter.
But whilst we're in the car, we might as well take the opportunity to air our thoughts. What else is there to do?
Well, we're on the A303, so not a lot. Wonderful road as it is. Just gone past Basingstoke. And so we thought we'd bore ourselves even more by talking about triathlon.
Triathlon.
And the state of it. The absolute state of it.
The state of triathlon. Coming from two former triathletes.
Very much retired. Well, I'm more retired than you are.
Yeah, I don't know. Are you still a triathlete if you still do all three things, but you don't actually race, as it were?
I don't know. An active triathlete? Maybe. I don't know. My TT bike lives up in Yorkshire, so there's no danger of me actually riding it.
There's
if I kept it in London, it'd be dangerous. So I don't keep it anywhere near where I live.
You start commuting on it.
Might be quicker. Don't want to be that guy. But no, so I thought we'd have a bit of a rant, like an ode to Colby, if you like.
Ode to Colby?
Ode to Colby, a car pod.
Yes.
Not a solo one, but a car pod about... We've just had, obviously, Ironman World Champs, the men's version in Nice, which is nice.
See what you did there?
See what I did there.
Yeah.
But, completely different course. So the bike setups were quite interesting. And the positions that people are riding are freaking wild. I'm not going to lie. They're absolutely mental these days. So it just sort of got me thinking about how we fit age groupers. Being a funny bunch that we are, those age groupers, we're obviously very acutely aware of trends within the sport and things that filter down from pro ranks. But yeah, in terms of equipment, everyone's kind of on it. But how do we set ourselves up on said equipment? What should we be looking for? What should we be not doing as amateurs that the pros might be able to get away with? And yeah, just talk about the state of fitting for triathlon, because I think there's a lot of misconceptions, misinformation, and just general dross out there. Like, you walk around transition at any given race and you look at some of the setups, even without seeing people on them. I know this is bad because context is everything, but like, my word,
You're pumped about this, I can tell. Like,
it riles me.
Really,
it riles me. It really does, because you just spend so, like, triathletes are not shy of spending money.
Well, especially anyone who's doing Ironman.
Especially anyone who's doing Ironman. It's a considerable time and monetary investment.
Yeah.
And yeah, a lot of people could be making their lives easier, I reckon, by the way they're choosing to ride their bikes.
Yeah, I guess maybe I'll play devil's advocate on this.
I think you might have to
Yeah.
make this even remotely coherent.
It's definitely a definite kind of line that you're taking here.
Well, I just thought, we get some. I'm going to get some shade and some heat for this, and I'm here for it. Bring it. I think we need to bring more controversy to the podcast, especially, Ev's usually the bringer of the controversial topics. I thought, since Ev's not with us, on this particular journey, then I'll step up.
Yeah, when Ev's on holiday, cats will come out.
Exactly. He don't want to talk about triathlon anyway, does he?
Yeah, he's all about pinging spokes and round tubes.
Exactly. And riding around in circles.
Anyway. But yeah, let's the state of triathlon. Well, I don't know. Let's start with pros versus amateurs.
So I think we start with world champs.
Oh, okay, let's start with world champs.
I think that pros, right?
Yeah.
Wicked race. I think we talked about this with Cole, was it last week?
Yeah.
About, is it good for the sport? Yeah, I think it's absolutely good for the sport. I think it was a great race, super interesting bike course, and obviously setups were wildly different to what they would have been, or perhaps would have been if it was just another year in Kona. So I think I even spied a dropper post.
Did you?
Yeah.
Wow.
Can't remember whose bike it was on. Needless to say, didn't finish anywhere near the front.
It's not a road bike.
I don't know, actually. I think it might have been.
No, you can't.
You can't use a dropper in an aero road,
dropper
but So people are clearly thinking about it. But yeah, like some of the positions, like absolutely wild. Like obviously you can't talk about like wild bike positions without talking about D-Lev.
Yeah, I mean his bike position anyway is pretty wild. With his and it's pretty distinctive as well with his moulded arm cups.
Yeah.
Just being so far forward. And he's a big guy as well, so I guess he kind of exacerbates these kind of qualities. Or I don't know. What do you think?
Well, his bike is super interesting. So he rides a Scott foil.
Yeah.
It's got reasonably high stack on his front end. He's not super low. He's not like really bent over, but he's super long and really far forward.
Yeah.
Basically, it's almost like I don't know. I call it lazy aero. He's just like lying down on the thing.
Yeah.
Like
that's why his arm cups are so big.
But I'll caveat this. Obviously, it works for him.
Yeah.
Because the guy's an absolute machine.
Yeah.
But it's just like he's in a very extreme position, and kind of like I don't know kind of like the testing that they've done, the logic behind it. He's obviously a very capable and strong athlete to be able to maintain that, let alone put out the watts he does in that position. But yeah, I often sort of wonder like how much is he kind of biasing certain muscle groups in that position, and what does this potentially kind of do for his running? So being that far forward, like you have the front end high, you're long, you've got like these crazy long like massive arm pad cups where you can put a lot of weight through it. There's a lot of support at the front end, but the postural stress he must be under and the energy he's using to maintain that position, let alone put out the numbers that he does. I don't know, I can't help but think that there's probably a little bit kind of being left on the table for his run. Because like when Patrick ran past him to take second, like Magnus wasn't running slow, but Patrick made it look like he was stood still. Patrick ran 2:32, but Magnus is like, I'm convinced Magnus might run quicker if he had a little bit of more conservative bike position. I don't know. I'm hypothesising, and it's my prerogative as an armchair quarterback to do that. But yeah, I do wonder if like something that extreme, if you're like putting all your eggs in one basket to like hammer the bike as hard as you can. Like, the days of like, your Thomas Hellriegels, your like Norman Stadlers, that kind of vibe, where you could get away with just being an Uber biker.
Yeah.
Now you have to be good at all three.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. The game has changed. There's so many people who are so good at all three disciplines. If you're not making that first swim pack, mate, you've got so much work to do.
Yeah.
And if you're not able to really make it work on the bike, then you just can't set yourself up for success. But I guess this is the never-ending puzzle of triathlon. There's so many things to balance over and above just pure fitness and your ability to swim, then bike, and then run off it. Is there, even as a professional, is there enough time to test all of these scenarios under load to get a good enough appreciation for what you're going to put your body under? And no doubt that pros are pros, not necessarily because they've got the best position or the best bike or anything like that, but it's my opinion, most pros are pros because they're physiologically just different. They're like a different species to the rest of us. Their bodies are just so much more capable somehow that they can both kind of generate and absorb load just much more efficiently or in a better way compared with us kind of mere mortals. And so yes, they can get away with a lot more, and maybe that's okay for them. Like, it doesn't affect them in the same way as, like, if we were riding in the same super forward position and overusing our quads because we're having to produce power and kind of hold that postural stress. We see this time and time again in the fit studio. As soon as you move someone back into a more sustainable position, or like a more real position where they can use hamstrings, glutes and quads all at once, like, everything just feels better. They're so much more sustainable. But maybe pros, it just doesn't register on the same kind of level. Yeah. I don't know.
It's interesting, isn't it? I mean, like, Magnus has been riding that position pretty well for a while, so he obviously does all right. Yeah. Like, it works for him, and that's great. But I don't know. I just can't help but think: is there something different that does it need to be that extreme? Because you look at like Patrick's position in comparison, and obviously, heavy caveat: we're comparing apples and oranges on one day. At one point of the year under the conditions that were there on the day, and it's not a fair test. This is armchair fitting. It's heavy caveat. But Patrick's position's a lot more conservative. Yes, he's a lot smaller than Magnus. I think Patrick's like 5'9". So Magnus is like 6'3", 6'4". So like, Patrick can get away with pushing less power because he's smaller. But his just general position and the muscles he's going to be recruiting, the postural stress he's going to be under, it's just a lot more balanced. And Patrick's a front pack swimmer. It's fine. Like, he's going to get out of the water in the back of the front pack, which is exactly where you want to be. If you're at the front, you're doing it wrong. And he's going to ride pretty conservatively. He's not going to be on the front. You're never going to see him until the back half of the marathon. And that's his kind of play. But I can't help but wonder if that's a more sustainable approach. So, like, to triathlon. Like, triathlon is one sport with three elements. And I think, like, trickling down to, like, age groupers, that often gets forgotten. So, what you do in the swim will have a direct effect on how well you ride your bike. And your bike position and what muscles you're using, the stress you're under on the bike, which is the biggest portion of the race, will have a direct effect on how well or not you run. Bike for show, run for dough. That's what they say. So, if you're looking at it as, if you want to be kind of the best across the whole race, then you have to take that kind of, global approach, if you like. So, unfortunately, it's not all about the bike.
Yeah, I guess you don't know, though, until you almost take it to an extreme and test it
Yeah.
at that extreme and see, I don't know, how your body feels. I'm sure all the pro athletes will have some kind of debriefing at the end of the race and analysis of like what felt good, what didn't feel good, where they could have improved. And the process is the same for age groupers. You have to try stuff and test stuff, but maybe if you're going to get or make progress in the quickest kind of way, it's always useful to get expert advice.
But I think you hit a really good point there. Progress in the quickest way possible, because that's what we're all looking for, isn't it? We all want the progress as fast as possible, and sometimes it takes a bit longer than you might want. But that's part of the fun, the process of learning. None of us are off to the Olympics, so we may as well have fun doing it. But another thing is like what I sort of have in my head. I'm going to bounce around a little bit. You see Sebastian Kienle's set up from the Norseman. That was interesting.
Yeah, that was cool.
So for those who didn't see it, Kienle was riding a Scott foil. So he normally rides the plasma time trial bike. He's riding a Scott foil, which is an aero road bike, a very aero road bike, pretty aggressive one, but with time trial front end. And I thought that was interesting given the nature of the course. And that everyone in Nice is a similar kind of bike course. Obviously the conditions are a lot different, but Norseman's super hilly. Nice is super hilly. But everyone in Nice was riding a time trial bike, bar a few.
So explain to everyone what's the main difference between like the Scott foil aero road bike from a kind of geometry perspective, I guess.
So a road bike generally, and an aero road bike, so if you take the foil versus the plasma, so Sebastian Kienle is sponsored by Scott, they're those two different platforms. Your time trial bike will generally pitch you a lot further forward because of the steeper seat tube angle. Now you've got a lot of adjustment within this because a lot of TT bikes are quite adjustable, so they have like this clamp which you can slide along the seat post. So you'll get like, rather than like a true seat tube angle, you'll get an effective seat tube angle depending on where you put the clamp, and it's usually somewhere between 75 at its slackest to kind of 80-81 at its steepest, so you've got a massive range of adjustment.
So just to be clear, seat tube angle is essentially dictates where your kind of hips or your butt sit, how far back it sits relative to the bottom bracket of the bike or your feet.
So the way we explain this usually in like a fit session would be like doing a squat. So when you kind of like tip your weight forward, that's your seat coming more forward to pitching you kind of close, you're sitting your kind of saddle closer to your feet. When you go back, you sit further, deeper into your squat. Seat goes away from your feet. That's the kind of the fixed position of where your pedals are. So you've got a huge range of adjustment on these time trial bikes. But if you ride a road bike, then the seat tube angles are generally a bit slacker. So most modern aero road bikes are around about 74 and a half. Some are a bit steeper at 75. So they're still like relatively far forward compared to the 73 degrees that we all used to ride.
Classic road bike.
Classic road bike. There's a podcast in itself about that.
Classic road bike, yes.
But what it does, it just sits you slightly further back relative to your feet. So you prioritise different muscle groups. It's slightly more kind of like posterior chain biased, and generally speaking, this is talking in generalities, a slightly less posturally stressful situation.
Less weight forward because essentially your body weight isn't tipping forward as much, so less weight in the hands, less stress on the shoulders, things like that. A little bit more weight into the saddle, less weight into the feet. That's a whole other thing. But so there's a big difference between a road bike and a time trial bike, just purely on its geometry, and that dictates kind of where you sit on the bike and how you generate force or power, and how much weight there is distributed throughout the bike. So road bike is going to be distributed a bit more rearwards, a bit more into the saddle, time trial bike, more weight forward into the cockpit.
But why this is relevant is terrain,
Yes.
course terrain.
Yeah.
So on a flattish course like Kona, the average speed is much higher, and you are more reliant on your aerodynamics as opposed to your force production.
Yeah.
Right? So yes, you still have to produce force and more of it as the racing gets faster and faster. But on a course like Nice or the Norseman, where it is you're literally riding almost Grand Tour stages, you have to, you're not getting anywhere near as much aerodynamic benefit. So you may as well prioritise force production in a more balanced way, in a less posturally stressful way, because your main obstacle to forward motion is gravity, as opposed to the wind. So, and this is kind of an interesting thing about kind of like pro setups on flatter courses versus what we try and replicate as age groupers. Like these massively kind of like forward positions whereby, we're prioritizing aerodynamics, but then speed and the speed you're going also plays a massive part into this. So we love to talk about watts and what's saved and all this kind of stuff, but there's like a bell curve of kind of where the speed matters relative to aerodynamic, or where the aerodynamics matter relative to speed, right? So the faster you're going, the more aerodynamics is going to matter, which is why to someone like Ganna, who is like rocking round at 55 odd kilometers an hour, for the most of it, aerodynamics is pretty important for someone like him. As soon as he breaks the position, it's like hoisting the sails. So he needs to be able to sustain that kind of like, really forward, aggressive aerodynamic position, because he's going so fast that, he can't, like, the power to put out that he will need to put out to get that extra gain in speed is just, it's almost impossible, to put out. Rewind, come back into the middle of the pack where we all are. If we're traveling, say, 35 k's an hour, as a good age group, 40 k's an hour if you're at the sharp end, then your main obstacle is kind of, you're not going to get up to the speeds that the pros are riding. So aerodynamics is less of a, it's still important, don't get me wrong, but it's less of a thing. You need to be able to put the power out first to get up to the speeds where aerodynamics can give you a bigger gain. I've put that ridiculously convoluted way, but I could have put that more eloquently, but you get the point, right? So what we potentially maybe want to prioritise as age groupers and mid-packers is force production over aerodynamics. Now that's not kind of like, it's not fun, it's not sexy, it's not kind of like, what we want, but if you can't get up to the speeds where aerodynamics are going to give you enough of a gain, then you're kind of leaving stuff on the table, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And there's so many elements to it that you've got to start somewhere. Especially, a lot of people come into our studio to have a bike fit. They haven't had a bike fit before, but they got a fancy new bike and they want to get the most out of it. But aerodynamics has to be earned. Like a position has to be earned. Like you have to train into it. It's just like your fitness. You can't just turn up one day and be fit. You can't turn up one day and just have an amazing bike position. Like bike riding is very strange for your body. It's an unnatural body position, unnatural movement pattern for your body to assume. So you have to train your body to be able to do all the things that you need it to do for that situation. So if you want to be aerodynamic, then you have to maintain your body position, as you were saying. Like Ganna you have to be able to generate force in that kind of aerodynamic position, and you have to stay there and do it over and over and over again for 50,000 pedal strokes or however many it is for the demands of your sport. So I don't know. I've lost my train of thought.
No, it's building the pyramid, isn't it? Like, you can't hack fitness, you can't hack your bike position, and buying a time trial bike isn't necessarily automatically going to make you faster.
Yeah, I think that's it. We see that so much, don't we? Coming into the studio, everyone goes, "Oh yeah, I've really got into this triathlon thing. I'm going to buy a time trial bike." And it's like, well, do you really need to?
Yeah, learn your craft.
Yeah.
I'm not saying don't go out and buy a time trial bike, but it's like, know what you're getting into.
Yeah.
Know what it's going to take. You know, it's going to take years of adaptation, not only to be able to ride that bike and maintain that position, but learn to handle that bike. Speed is also a function of confidence. If you can't go around a corner, like a really nice sweeping open corner in your aero bars, then there's probably some stuff that we're leaving on the table there as well.
Yeah.
So, you know, if you don't have the confidence to pin it and really push, then that's speed lost.
Yeah.
So there's all these things like that kind of go into like a good kind of time trial position, like stability on the bike, like, you know, how's the bike handle? You know, the further forward you are, the more weight you've got over the front wheel. Like, you know, your front wheel's going to be under a lot more load, and that's going to, you know, there's a tipping point where that's a bad thing.
Yeah.
You know, so it's all these kind of things that we need to consider with our bike positions and, you know, the demands of the sport. You know, if you're absolutely like cream crackered coming off the bike, then, you know, even if you're racing like Olympic distance, which, you know, you've got a 10k run to do, you know, that's a long walk.
Yeah.
You know, times that by a half marathon or a full marathon, and, you know, you're the best part of a full day of exercise. Yeah, you'll get value for money for your race entry, but it's not gonna do much for the ego, is it?
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. Bring it back to our discussion about Nice and pro setups, handling. That is the other critical part of the equation in terms of your bike setup and how you can tailor your bike setup to the demands of the course. So if you're doing a hilly course, then there's a greater demand on your bike handling skills, especially in Nice, where there's no freaking barriers at the side of the road. So if you get it wrong, you're getting off the side of the mountain.
Cliff. Yeah.
But yeah, absolutely. Like this was where I was kind of curious to see how positions might change in response to that demand of being able to descend well. And, you know, triathletes, dare we say it, are notoriously bad bike handlers anyway, compared with, say, like a road bike, a road racer. Because you tend to be prioritizing, say, aerodynamics and squeezing yourself into the smallest position possible.
Oh no, let's call a spade a spade. Spend too much time on a turbo.
All right. Spend too much time on turbo. But generally, like,
it's true though, isn't it?
Triathlon courses are generally not very exciting, and they're just, you know, straight roads. Pretty flat. Which is why Nice was really exciting. You know, it brings another quality out. I wanted to see some kind of demon descending. Who out of all the pros have actually got some bike handling skills?
Rudy von Berg. Yeah. Absolutely. Man's an absolute demon. But he's lived there, grew up there.
Yeah.
So he knows the roads. But that's a good point. It's like, we saw that the first time they had a world champs in Nice at 70.3, where Rudy von Berg just dropped everyone because he could just go around the corners on the descent in his aero bars because he was confident in his bike and he's a good bike handler. So, but yeah, his position's it's forward, but it's not like super extreme. So he's probably got good balance on the bike as well. Yeah. Like, you know, the bike probably behaves quite well.
Yeah. Because we talked about going uphill and the demands of having to ride uphill and using different muscle groups when you go uphill and not being so aerodynamic. But then you've got to go, like, what goes up must come down. And, you know, I've seen it time and time again, you know, like people who, like even in the Tour de France, like, who's it, Pinot. Pinot was like classic, like fantastic French climber.
Such
all the way.
Such an emotional ride.
I know, we could do a whole episode on Pino. I love the guy.
Love Timo Pino.
Yeah. But yeah, he was a terrible descender. So was Chris Froome, I think.
Chris Froome, yeah.
So it really had to work on it, because all that time that you kind of earned on the way up, you just lose on the way down, because you can't handle your bike around the hairpins and so on. So yeah, I wish I could. There was more kind of like downhill footage or more stats on the downhill.
No, for sure, and that's something there to consider if you're targeting like a hilly race. We're just going to take a short moment for a cultural interlude as we crawl at 10 miles an hour past Stonehenge on the 303.
Good for the pod, though.
It's good for the pod. Yeah.
So, God, there's loads of people at Stonehenge today.
Yeah.
What was it? A Thursday?
It's
Is that here on a Thursday?
Random Thursday, isn't it?
Yeah.
Anyway, there's sheep and old stones and a traffic jam on the 303. Shock horror. But yeah, stats on the downhill could be quite interesting. But it's something to consider. If you're targeting like a hilly race, like a key hilly race, then do you want to be like slammed all the way forward? Maybe not.
Yeah. Just imagine if your position is already quite far forward, you've got a lot of weight on the handlebars. If then the road tips downwards, then you're almost falling over the front of the bars, and that can be quite scary.
Wakes you up.
Yeah, and so that's why mountain bikers have dropper posts, so they can get their weight further back. But if you're on a time trial bike, then it's pretty hard to kind of shift your weight so that you can balance your bike as you're going down.
Yeah. So considering what bike you're going to ride, maybe you're better off on your road bike.
Yeah. But it's probably why Kienle rode a road bike for Norseman, because it's just that, again, your more balanced position means being able to generate power going uphill, but also being able to shift your weight and move your weight around when you're going downhill.
No, exactly.
And even the front end of the bike, there's geometry considerations at the front end of the bike. There's kind of the head tube angle, things like that, and the height of the handlebars as well tends to be a little bit higher on the road bike, maybe.
Yeah.
So.
Although saying that, talking about front ends, the myth that lower is better, more aero.
Yeah.
So another thing that we noticed, or I noticed, because I'm sad like that, is that positions at the front end seem to be getting higher and higher.
Yeah, that's good.
And this makes me super happy. And I'll tell you for why.
All right.
Because AM1, you can see where you're going. You don't want to be like Egan Bernal and go careering into the back of a bus and like break every bone in your body.
Yeah.
Poor chap. He's doing considering like he did that 2 years ago.
Yeah.
He finished the tour this year.
Yeah.
Epic.
Yeah.
Absolute legend. So higher front end positions give you better vision, see where you're going, better breathing.
Yeah.
So oxygen's quite important to make your muscles function. So if you can breathe better, then that's generally a good thing. Better, less pressure on your stomach, your abdomen. So if you followers of our blog will appreciate the trials and tribulations we went through with Colin's bike position and his stomach cramps. Yeah. So the more blood you can keep at your stomach, the better you're going to process that fuel that's you're going to put into your body. Yep. Morton's expensive. Yep. You don't want to throw it up. So better fuel consumption, better uptake of calories means you've got more energy to put force through the bike and then save for the run as well.
Yep.
And let's face it, you've got more chance of maintaining your position for longer if it's less posturally stressful.
Yeah.
So there's no real downside. The key kind of thing is the narrower you can be and the more you can maintain that narrow position, that's what's going to give you the aero gains. Now, I'm not backing this with any sort of my own science. I'm many things. I'm not a scientist, but anecdotally, it just makes sense. If you can maintain your aero position for longer, and you're not having to take breaks coming up into the base bar, you're going to go faster.
Yeah. Well, Matt, maybe next year we're going to be in the wind tunnel.
The wind tunnel.
Just a little teaser there. So yeah, stay tuned.
Foundation does high performance.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
But yeah, so like pro positions getting higher and higher at the front, and yeah, like I think this is in conjunction with things getting further and further forward as well. Like the further forward you go, the lower you are, the more posturally stressful it is.
Yeah.
So, you know, I'm going to keep harping on about Magnus, but like, you know, Sam Laidlow as well, his position at the front is quite high, and it makes sense. Like, yeah, there's very little downside. The costs relative to the gains are minimal, and this obsession with having the front end lower that we seem to have in like age group rankings, like we see it all the time. Like, love the keyboard warriors on Instagram, right? I don't have Instagram, but I partake in the foundation Instagram page every now and again just to see what's going on in the comments, because I love the comments. And the amount of times you get, like, you know, a TT position where it's like, oh, it looks a bit high at the front end. It's like, well, yeah, you know, we're not riding 10 miles and then collapsing on the floor. We're doing a fairly lengthy triathlon. You know, minimum half a day's worth of exercise.
Yeah.
So yeah, lower at the front end, not always better.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's a bit of a rant, but
I wonder, just on a slight tangent, whether or not that the higher front ends have been made more possible with the different options or cockpit options that are now available to mostly professionals.
Yeah.
Like all the moulded arm cups and the
3D printed stuff. And,
yeah.
All the aftermarket things.
Yeah. Which essentially just support, instead of your traditional just forearm cup, like that just sticks underneath your elbow. And it's actually a fairly small area to be supporting quite a lot of body weight. The more advanced armrests now try and support your entire forearm.
Yeah, and this has to contribute in being able to have that more forward position, because the weight's got to go somewhere, right?
Yeah.
So if it's more kind of on your front end and your upper body, then yeah, more surface area in contact with your body to distribute the load makes sense. Yeah. So yeah, you're probably like enabling these more extreme forward positions by the advances in like 3D printing and the options now that you have in aftermarket cockpits. So it makes total sense. But like I say, you know, you don't need to spend €2,000-3,000 euros on a 3D moulded cockpit to get a good position, like relative to where you're at. You know, so like we love Profile Design stuff and like what they're doing with their like new Ergo Plus and Race Plus longer arm pad rests that just bolt straight on. Yeah, it's wicked. You know?
Yeah, that was great. That fit yesterday was amazing. Just put new pads on. It's like change the front end.
Yeah, like instantly more comfortable, but more sustainable hopefully as well. Yeah. So it's just, you know, you don't have to go like full gas and like get, you know, a 3D printed mold of your arm, but just little things like that can really make a difference. Yeah. But yeah, adjustability of bikes. No. That's another thing. Like, you know, we've gone on to aftermarket stuff. Adjustability of bikes, right? Because this is another gripe I have. Yeah. Like the fact that TT bikes, like especially one in particular, which I loathe, they're so aggressive. Yeah. Like, and the adjustability that's required sometimes is lacking. Yeah. So as much as I bash Canyon and I love doing it, they're kind of like, I don't know what they call it. Is it the Speedmax CF? Yeah. The quote-unquote entry-level one. Yeah. That is a wicked bike. Yeah. Right? Because it's super adjustable. Yeah. You've got like a regular front end, so you can change the cockpit because it's a normal stem. Yeah. So if you want to put like a posh like front end on it, you can. You can build it up with loads of risers. I think you've got up to like 40 mils of risers out of the box.
Yeah, I think you can go up to 70 on that.
Yeah, you can go up to 70 if you buy the one, but like Canyon ship it with 40 which is wicked, and you've got Profile Design front end, so you can like tinker with it, which is great. And you've also got at the back a hugely adjustable seat post, It's got 2 position clamps,
Yeah.
so you can achieve that more rearward position
Yeah.
for a more real world kind of fit. For an athlete that's maybe not accustomed to riding a super forward aggressive position. So Canyon doing it right. Lots of other manufacturers not so good.
Yeah.
So like one bike that particularly springs to mind, they've just released a new one called the Speed Machine. I don't know if you've seen this, but BMC's older Time Machine, like the one with the flap and the V cockpit,
yeah.
cost £1,000 to change the cockpit. Sorry, what? £1,000 for a cockpit that is still quite unadjustable.
Yeah.
Like the flat one, I think you can get up to like 80 mils, 90 mils of spaces at the front. Still pretty low, not gonna lie. And the higher you build it up, the more unstable it is, even with the brace. You took the V cockpit on, that's not that adjustable. You can't get any more than 10 degrees of tilt, which annoys me, because I want adjustability. And you're paying £1,000 for it, a cockpit. It blows my mind.
Yeah, but it looks really cool, man.
Yeah, but you can't ride it.
Yeah, but it looks really cool.
I guess it's all about the intimidation of transition into it. Like, you look like you're turning up on a spaceship. It's like, I'm going to go fast. But
once you've bought that bike without having a bike fit beforehand, then it's really hard for people to get rid of it, because they're like, it's the sunk cost fallacy, isn't it?
Yeah.
They're like, I've spent all this money, so I've got to use it.
We haven't even talked about the back end of that bike yet.
Yeah.
So you've got 2 seat post positions, one for UCI, one for triathlon, right?
Yeah.
So you can't use the more rearward UCI position if you want to use the little tackle box on the back, because that's where the seat post goes.
Yeah.
And you need a really long seat post to use that position. So I think it was who's on BMC at the moment? It's AG2R, isn't it?
Yeah.
So if you watch like those guys ride that bike on like time trials, they have like the really long seat post in the rearward position. You turn that into a triathlon bike, you are hacking almost, sometimes 2 foot off the seat post to get it short enough whereby it can go in the frame for someone to reach the pedals.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, and
you've got to cut it at a 45
and you've got to cut it at a 45 degree angle. If you get it wrong, that seat post will set you back like nearly 250 quid. What is that?
I remember the first time cutting one of those, and I was absolutely sweating.
Like, whenever I fitted those bikes, I spent more time cutting the seat post than I did a bike fit. And they send you this little guide to cut it with, which is quite handy, quite thoughtful. But it's made out like basically cheese.
Yeah.
So like as soon as you like cut into it, you're done.
Yeah.
It's shocking bike, absolutely shocking. So yeah, bike manufacturers need to do better.
Yeah.
But I get it from their perspective as well. Like, less and less bike manufacturers are making triathlon bikes now, or TT bikes, because they're so expensive, it's so niche.
Yeah.
Like, why would you?
Yeah. Cervelo P series.
Wicked bike.
Yeah.
Love that bike. Super adjustable, good geometry, easy to live with, fast as.
Yeah.
I had a P2, but I'm biased.
Yeah.
I have a P2.
It's like, they're just easy to work with. That's the thing. And I think the key point, though, is that if your bike is limited in adjustability, both limits your position and the ability for the bike to adapt around you as your body changes. And remember, that's the whole point of training. Training is you're training to be specifically good at something. You're training to change your body. So if your body changes, then your bike needs to change with you. So if you've got an unadjustable bike, well, where do you set it? And then how do you get it to change with you? Are you going to spend like another £1,000 just to change the cockpit as your body changes and becomes more capable?
Absolutely not.
But also, if you have an unadjustable bike, then it limits the kind of races that you can do. Like, as amateurs, as age groupers, or even as pros, you're going to be racing lots of different kind of races in different locations with different demands and so on. That's the whole point. You want to go out and enjoy all these different kind of courses, because they're different. Like if you're going to go race Austria, that's going to be very different from Lanzarote. So you know, if you're limited by your bike and you can't change your position to tailor it to the demands of your course, then you're just losing out. You're just, you know, you're not going to have as much fun. So, you know,
if only there was a way to know what you needed before you bought it. Wouldn't that be amazing?
You're being facetious, man.
Always.
Yeah. Well,
no, but that's the point, isn't it? It's like, you know, don't limit yourself by the lack of adjustability of your bike. I know we harp on about it and we sound like grumpy old men, but like integrated stuff and proprietary components, not necessarily.
Well, it's a choice, isn't it?
It is a choice.
At the end of the day,
you're right, it is a choice.
If you are able to, you know, buy a bike that is specifically designed and integrated and so on, super aero, and it does one job really, really well, and then you can buy another bike to do another job.
Yeah, cool.
Fine,
then crack on. Yeah.
But you know, you just know what you're getting into.
Exactly.
That's the thing. Like, know what you're getting into.
Yeah.
And you know, the pros have a very specific job, and so they have a very specific bike and position to do that job. So yeah, I don't know. I think we've tried quite hard to put people off here.
No, I don't think we're trying to put people off. I just think it's like you need to have like an honest conversation with yourself. It's like what you want versus what you might need.
Yeah.
You know, so it's kind of like, yeah, I might want, you know, a super aerodynamic kind of position, but if your body's not ready for that, yeah, you might need to do some off-bike work. To get in the gym, get strong, like earn that position.
Yeah.
There's no reason you can't get there at all, but it's having one eye on where you are now versus one eye on where you want to go.
Yeah. And will your bike support you through that journey?
For that process? Yeah, 100%. And yeah, like the more adjustability you have, the more options you have.
Yeah.
So you know you're kind of less limited by, you know, your body's the main limiter basically. So it's just, yeah, like you said, it's all about choice and making honest, good decisions based on as much information as you can accumulate. You know, the more information you have, the better decisions that you can make, usually. Usually. But it's that thing of like, you know, not drinking the bike industry Kool-Aid and just like slamming everything forward, because that's what you see on Slow Twitch or whatever. You know, figuring out what does your body need. You know, do you need that a more rearward position? Like, would taking pressure off your quads and your calves allow you to run to your potential?
Yeah.
Like all this kind of stuff. Can you maintain a really narrow position at the front, or does a slightly wider position allow you to drop your head between your shoulders?
Yeah.
Which might actually, so wider might actually be more aero. Like, you know, figuring all this stuff out is part of the fun. This is like our little version of F1, really, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
So figuring out what you need is one thing, and making buying decisions on a bike that allows you to adapt as you develop is the second part of the
It works both ways, doesn't it? Like, I had a fit last night, and this guy actually, his cockpit was too high. Like, we couldn't get a cockpit that was low enough. Like, we had ended up on a like minus 20 degree stem and stuff. The rest of the bike was great, but just the front end of it was like too high. And he was way more comfortable with the lower handlebars because he had great flexibility. So yeah, and just got to figure out what you need.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, I think
I don't know, that turned into a bit of a rant, didn't it?
yeah.
A bit of an incoherent bouncing around everywhere, but
hopefully that's enough knowledge for one session.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting though, just kind of like, just seeing the variety of bike positions and how, you know, the guys in Nice did on that particular day, on that particular course, and you know, so it's always fun to kind of speculate as to who could have done what better, and be an armchair quarterback.
It'll be interesting to see how it develops over the years. If they keep Nice as this regular kind of slot, then will people almost train specifically for it and have a different setup for it? Was it Eden who turned up with
Gustav
the road
Eden turned up with a road bike
Yeah.
on 70.3 Worlds, and
Yeah.
he smashed everyone
Yeah.
because he could run. Basically,
Yeah.
He didn't have a time trial bike. He was unsponsored at the time, I think.
Yeah.
He didn't have a time trial bike, so he turned up on a Venge.
Yeah.
There's a bike. Turned up on a Venge with some clip-on draft legal aero
Yeah.
bars because he was racing ITU at the time.
Yeah.
And
Smash
he's just
proudly.
just really comfy on that bike.
Yeah.
And he broke Alistair in the first sort of 8-10k of the run.
Yeah.
And that was all she wrote. So it can be done, but what'll be interesting to see is how AM1 the women get on in Kona. Because I don't know if you've seen sort of following Daniela Reef's kind of progress a little bit. So she's got back to Brett Sutton as a coach. Got on this ridiculous new felt TT bike, which is basically even more of a slab of carbon than the old one was. But her position has changed a little bit from what it always was. So it'll be interesting to see how she does.
Let's do another pod on the women in about a month's time.
But then also, what happens when the women go to Nice?
Yeah.
And if any of them change their setups.
Yeah.
So that'd be quite interesting. Lots of triathlon.
All right, nice one. Thanks, Matt. Catch you guys next time. If you made it to the end of this episode, thanks for listening. If you enjoyed what you heard, do leave us a rating or review, as this really helps other riders find our podcast too, and motivates us to keep making more episodes. Thanks for your support, and catch you on the next one.